Brett Adams, and I'm the bartender that created the A Bottle of Whiskey cocktail poster. I'm going to make a quick video here showing you how to use the poster. I think it's beautiful. I think it's something that you can put on your wall, put it above your bar cart, put in your man cave, wherever. It's going to look great, but what I really created it for was for you to use it. I want you to look at this poster and to be able to use this map to find your next favorite drink and also to understand how cocktails work in general. So we're gonna go through two concepts here. One is a direct route through the poster and one is more conceptual so you can understand the general idea. And both of those things I think are gonna help you make way better drinks at home and really utilize this piece of art here. So without further ado, let's just do this real quick here. So here's the whole poster. Now let's do one where we take a straight line through and watch how subtle variations on a cocktail create brand new drinks. So we start here with a bottle of whiskey, we add bitters, and we add simple syrup. We get to an old fashioned. Now an old fashioned is the very first cocktail, so it makes sense that we'd start with this here. We could talk forever about why it's called an old fashioned, where it came from, but our point being here is that an old fashioned is a spirit, in this case whiskey, with a little bit of bitters and simple syrup. Now bitters and simple syrup are super important because they balance each other out. If you just add simple syrup, it's gonna taste a little sweet. If you just add bitters, it's gonna be kind of like, it's gonna lack the depth and it's gonna be really thin and also too bitter. So those things work together to create depth without being too sweet. So when you have bitters and simple syrup and you add them to a spirit, you get an old fashioned, and old fashioned is designed to showcase the flavor of that spirit, but to make it a lot easier to drink, and it's a very simple, really delicious cocktail. Now what happens when we get an old fashioned and we want to make a slight variation? Well, why don't we just add a little bit of absinthe and you get a Sazerac. Now Sazerac's not exactly the same, it's got a little bit different setup as far as bitters, but conceptually, it's essentially just an old fashioned with a little bit of absinthe. And that slight change makes an entire new drink. But it also helps you understand what a Sazerac is, and that's not coming from thin air. It's the same build. Now, if we wanted to make a slight variation on Sazerac, one of my favorite things to do is add just a little bit of maraschino liqueur, and you get an improved whiskey cocktail. This is your favorite cocktail that you've never tried yet, essentially. I think it makes maraschino an essential part of your home bar, so now you know what to buy, and it's a great, great variation. If you love Sazeracs, you're gonna love an improved whiskey cocktail. But if we back up here, that's a great way to see how just doing one change and one change and one change, you get three unique different cocktails, but you know you're probably gonna like them because you already like an old fashioned. So it's a way to use this map to find another drink you're gonna like without having to go to a bartender and be like, what should I drink next? So that's a straight line. Let's think more conceptually about this. How can we use this poster to understand how cocktails work in general? And let's use a whiskey sour for our example here. So whiskey sour is gonna be, start with whiskey obviously, get a little lemon, little simple syrup, egg white, it's optional, but use it, it's delicious, it adds a creamier texture, you get a whiskey sour. Now, same with bitters and sugar, lemon and sugar, or more vaguely, acidity and sugar, are a really important part of balancing a sour cocktail. You can't just have lemon, you can't just have sugar, you need them both and you need them in balance. But if you back up and you think, well, if all you need is some sort of sweetness, some sort of acidity, we don't just need lemon and sugar, we can do anything. So what if we switched up the sugar? A really subtle way to switch the sugar up is to add honey, and then you get a gold rush. Honey and bourbon make total sense together, and a gold rush is a great, delicious drink. Well, if you like a gold rush, why don't you add a liqueur instead of honey that has similar sweetness to honey, but maybe a little more complexity? Right above that, that's Benedictine. Benedictine is amazing French liqueur, kind of has a chamomile honey bitter thing going on. Benedictine, lemon, whiskey, you get a Frisco sour. So now all of a sudden, just in making variations on the simple syrup, we went from a classic whiskey sour to a Frisco sour, a gold rush, and once you understand how a gold rush works, you realize, oh, if I just make that hot, add a little ginger and allspice, I got a delicious hot toddy. Oh, that's what a hot toddy is. You know, you start to really understand how these things work, and you don't have to just switch up the sweetness. You can also switch up the acidity. So let's move down to lime. Now we can do a basic whiskey sour with lime called a bourbon shake, and that's just gonna be lime and simple syrup. But if you want to add a little bit more complexity, we can add bitters, which we've already learned works really great with simple syrup because it's going to balance it out. and allspice dram, which adds a really cool wintry depth to the drink. And then you get a lion's tail. Lion's tail is essentially a bourbon tiki style cocktail. Really, really delicious. Again, I've served tons of these and had nobody not like it. It's a great, great drink. But if you back up, you're gonna realize, wow, I like a whiskey sour up there, but because of that, and because I could think about how these things are made, because this map shows you the building blocks, now I realize like, oh, I'm also gonna like a Gold Rush. I may love a Frisco sour, and I may love a Lion's Tail. And I also now know that when I go to the liquor store, if I buy Benedictine, if I buy Maraschino, if I buy Allspice Dram, I'm not just gonna waste my money on a bunch of liqueurs I'm never gonna use. And that's the secondary benefit of this poster, is you get to see, well, I've got Benedictine, so now I can make a stirred Frisco cocktail, which is a whole other thing, or I can make a junior, which is essentially a Frisco sour, but with lime juice. And so you start to realize how useful all these liqueurs can be, and you're not wasting your money at the liquor store buying a bottle you're only gonna use once. So, get back in here. That's the basic idea. You can kind of take a straight line through the poster, or you can back up and take a more of a conceptual approach. We didn't even talk about Manhattans, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, it's a really useful tool that I genuinely want you to use so that you can make better drinks. I think so much cocktail making is obscured by people pretending to be fancy mixologists or something like that, when they're not being, kind of honest with the fact that we're all making things with building blocks, with recipes that are proven. We're making subtle variations on that. And the cool thing for me as a bartender is if you learn this and you know how to make all this at home, then I can spend my time making more obscure variations on it. I can make syrups that are really complex that would be annoying to make at home. And you can really utilize professional bartenders for the time they have to make special things. And then when you go home, you can make really great, simple classics that are never gonna go out of style, they're never gonna get tired of, and you can impress all your friends and drink better. And that's, I think, a really good thing to do, right? Well, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you get the poster, buy it for all your friends. And I really want you to use it. I want you to benefit from it. And yeah, cheers.